this. And what they're looking at is information that they developed over the last 2 years that Al-Qaeda is not a group, it's a network. And I think Secretary Powell said the same thing this morning. It is a network, and this network has been mutating over the past 2 years, and they've been trying to study this mutation. For example, Al-Qaeda has been reaching out to other terrorist groups, especially in North Africa and especially Algerians. And in 1994, for example, the only other case kind of similar to this was a hijacking that went bad for the Algerian terrorist group GIA, which has contacts to bin Laden. And in that case, they wanted to ram that jet into the Eiffel Tower, but that did not work. And so they're looking at that. They're also looking at possible significance of dates. Why did this happen in September? They know that bin Laden recently, and if you look at his most recent videotape that came out a few months ago, in that tape, he really embraces the Palestinian Intifada, which is a real shift for bin Laden. In the past, it has been American presence overseas. So they are looking at possible symbolism of September, going back to Black September, which was the radical Palestinian group that hijacked 4 planes back in 1970. 3 of those were successful hijackings, and also they were responsible for the Munich massacre during the Olympics. So they're looking at all of these things, going through their files, but nothing hard yet.
Yeah, it's a great indicator of just how much work there is to be done here. Mike Betcher, thank you very much. We'll be talking with you throughout the day on this one. Darren, over to you.
Leon, thank you. The stories about so many things, of course, fear and shock about what has happened to the United States. On a very practical matter, though, for many travelers, it means they are stuck wherever they were yesterday morning and they can't get home. Originally, the FAA had said early as possible the air restrictions on U.S. airspace would be lifted at noon today. We reported over an hour ago that that was not going to happen at noon. We have yet to hear what time that could be reinstated, but meanwhile, we're getting word that when flights do resume in the U.S., they will look very different than what we are used to as Americans. And with more on that, let's go to the White House, and our Kelly Wallace is standing by with more information on that. Kelly.
Well, Darren, obviously a big concern for many passengers around the country, but certainly a big concern for the administration. Senior administration officials telling my colleague John King just a short time ago that the full expectation is that Transportation Secretary Norman Mineta would have some announcement later today. Now, that the reason that this 12 noon Eastern time deadline has come and gone, we had senior administration officials telling CNN last night that the full expectation was that the airports would open at 12 noon Eastern time. These senior officials saying that the reason that deadline has come and gone and that the airports have not been reopened is that they really haven't had enough time to put sufficient security precautions in place. We heard Secretary Mineta say last night that they are going to impose tougher security guidelines and measures at the nation's airports before they reopen. Now, I did talk to another law enforcement source earlier who said, look, the U.S. government wants to be comfortable. It certainly wants to open up the airports as quickly as possible, get people back to normal, get U.S. business up and running. But the U.S. government also wants to be comfortable that proper security measures are in place. This source saying that there is a whole menu of recommendations on the table, including toughening security on the ground, such as checking in, such as identification, maybe even no curbside checking at some airports, and even some more security measures in the air, such as putting more air marshals on planes. So a lot of discussion right now, though, Darren. The full expectation, though, some announcement coming from Secretary Mineta later today. As you can see, the U.S. government trying to balance sort of competing priorities here, trying to get things back to normal as quickly as possible, but definitely wanting tougher security measures in place. Darren, back to you.
Clearly, people flying across America want it to be safe, Kelly. I think one of the things that's difficult right now, before travelers and their loved ones had that noon deadline to at least look forward to, and now not only did the administration take that off the table, they haven't even put another one on. Any word on when that announcement might come?
No, as I told you, my colleague John King, hearing that Secretary Mineta expected to make some sort of announcement today, some expectation that possibly airports could reopen today, according to one law enforcement source. But again, while you said, Darren, that many people sort of hoping that airports would be up and running, I bet you that a lot of the people around the country certainly want to make sure that tougher security measures in place steps are being taken. There's a lot of concern, as we've heard reported all throughout the day. I heard it yesterday when I was up in New York. A lot of people are concerned about how could this happen? How could 4 airliners be hijacked? And so certainly I think the American people would like to sort of see tougher measures in place to try to, in some way, make sure this never happens again.
Yeah,
Darren, back
absolutely.
to you.
No one wants to fly if it's not safe, and you look at the same time, 4 different planes, 2 airlines, and 3 different airports, and it makes people feel very unsettled about how safe it is to fly here in the U.S. Kelly Wallace at the White House. Thank you, Leon.
Well, you know, this is a perfect point to check in on a few airports, and we've got a reporter spread out this morning. Kathleen Koch is standing by there at Dulles Airport, and we've got our Ed Lavandera. He's in Dallas. And Bill Delaney is standing by at Logan Airport, which is the point of much scrutiny today. Let's go now and start with Bill. Bill?
Well, much scrutiny. This airport is still closed, Leon, and closed indefinitely. But I want to say right at the beginning of our little report here, a rapidly developing situation. A local television station now reporting that the FBI has ID'd all suspects and is about to make arrests. We can't confirm that. It is being broadcast, however, on a usually reliable local station here in Boston. Now, what we also know, of course, has been reported throughout the morning. A car was taken from Logan Airport Central Parking Garage overnight, brought to an FBI processing facility. As Mike Bencher mentioned earlier, that car being gone over. Interesting material, Mike Betcher called it. It's being called more specifically by law enforcement sources here an Arab language training manual for flying a big airplane. That car, as well as seats from Logan Airport, being gone over at an FBI processing facility. The seats being gone over, seats from the airport, for possible DNA evidence of who may have been involved with this, as I say, rapidly developing situation out here at the still closed Logan Airport. Back to you, Leon.
Well, Bill, before we let you go, let me ask you some more about this information you're hearing about the FBI being about to make some arrests right now. Does this mean the FBI is pretty much wrapped up what they're doing there at the airport? Is that what you're hearing?
This is a difficult situation. We want to be very careful. There was a press conference here, just ended about a half an hour ago, when Special Agent in Charge Charles Prouty of Boston absolutely refused to be drawn on any questions about the ongoing investigation. There are many strands to this story, including newspaper reports that several Arabs have been ID'd who may have been involved in the hijacking itself, including 2 carrying Middle Eastern passports, 1 known to be a trained pilot. That report out there from reliable law enforcement sources as well. But the FBI and state and local police officials absolutely refusing, really quite stone-faced, to be drawn on any of these questions at the press conference just ended 20 minutes ago or so. So yes, there is a report out there just in the last few minutes from a usually reliable local television station here, but all of that denied earlier, the FBI saying they had nothing to tell us, that this was an ongoing investigation, and as I say, half an hour ago, they gave us no indication that anything was about to break here, Leon.
That actually is about what you would expect the FBI to say and to do. All right, thank you very much, Bill Delaney. That could turn out to be some very significant news that may be breaking very soon for us. We'll get back to you later. Let's go now to Dallas, where Ed Lavandera is standing by there. Ed, over to you.
Leon, the Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport is the 2nd largest airport in the country. 2,300 flights a day originate from here. So usually this is a place buzzing with passengers and buzzing with crews moving in and around, and the humming of airplanes flying overhead. But this place has been left completely deserted today outside of the intense security scene that we have seen here today. This is an American Airlines terminal. It has been completely shut down as crews here are doing security sweeps of the buildings. 152 airplanes are sitting on the tarmac here at DFW International Airport, waiting for the queue to be able to take off again. We have spoken with several airport officials and airline officials throughout the morning, saying that a lot of their crews have completely rested, so that when they do get the go-ahead to move ahead, the crews will be able to move ahead, but that there are a lot of airplanes out of place, so that when the government does give the official go-ahead to move forward with taking off again, that it could take a little bit of time to get a lot of these planes back into position. But they said that this is, in a lot of ways, is just like a severe storm, and that the airplanes and all the airlines will be able to get moving ahead quickly. Leon, back to you.
Ed Lavandera in Dallas, thank you very much. Now, let's go over to Kathleen Koch, who is standing by at Dulles National Airport. Kathleen.
Leon, as you can see behind me, this huge, normally bustling international airport is a barricaded ghost town. You see no one except media, except police officers moving around at this airport. When you look out on the tarmac where normally at this time of day there would be dozens of flights landing, planes lined up waiting to take off, there is nothing. There is not a ground crew. There is no human movement. The parking lot to my right is filled with cars, but no people, no one dragging their suitcases out, no one rushing to catch a flight. It is truly a very eerie sight. Now, of course, this is the airport where the doomed flight number 77, American Airlines Flight 77, departed from and then cut that huge gash into the Pentagon. Very near here is the Dulles Marriott, where we have had some families meeting there. They began arriving, some yesterday morning, a few more this morning, and they have been meeting with grief counselors, with chaplains. American Airlines has also established a set of people who have come in, some 75 of them, airline employees who have come in, and they're actually dispersing out to go to the homes of some of the families of these passengers who were killed in this deadly collision at the Pentagon, to help them cope, to support, to do whatever they can. Now, as the preceding reporters have all mentioned, that when these airports do open up, that security will be very tight. I know that Kelly at the White House referred to the possibility of actually having marshals on the aircraft. That will be a very difficult undertaking when you consider that in the United States, generally on an average day, we have 35 to 40,000 flights landing and taking off, 4,000 to 5,000 in the air at any time. So that will be hugely difficult. Another thing that will make the opening of the airports perhaps experience some delay is not the issue of the aircraft being out of position, but the fact that these airports are now going to have to meet these new, more stringent security measures before they can safely open up. Leon?
All right. Thank you very much, Kathleen Cook, reporting to us live from Dulles National Airport. Now, let's go up to Paula in New York. Paula?
All right, and Leon, I'm going to take you directly back to Daytona Beach. We're looking at some interesting pictures from the Daytona International Airport, where we are told a bomb squad is thoroughly searching the cargo hold of a Continental jet. We don't know a whole lot about it, but it is our understanding that the luggage in this plane, for whatever reason, did not make its connection. We do not understand at this moment how this might be connected to the other stories coming out of South Florida. We know, according to Mike Betcher, at least 10 FBI agents were searching 2 houses in Vero Beach, Florida, and what appeared to be a part of the investigation of the deadly terrorist attacks against the United States. We know that the FBI in Miami issued a national bulletin for law enforcement agencies to be on the lookout for 2 cars. The bulletin did not mention whether the vehicles were linked to Tuesday's attacks. This also comes on the heels of a report that a South Florida couple is indicating that they may very well have trained several of these hijackers, some men that might have trained with them a year ago. So once again, we don't know exactly what the connection of this bomb squad search at the Daytona International Airport has to these other Florida stories. But to me, Darren, one of the most interesting things is what Mike Betcher was reporting about that car that the FBI agents have actually seized from a Boston parking garage outside of the Logan Airport there. He is reporting that some interesting materials have been seized from there. Bill Delaney going even further, his sources telling him that some Arab training manuals on flying a big plane were found in that car. So all of this will become clearer in the hours to come. As Bill Delaney reported early on, lots of small bits of information that are very difficult to thread together and dangerous to thread together at this point.
Yeah, Paula, and another thing from our David Ensors, he pointed out earlier this morning when we were talking to him, this very difficult balance for government officials. They don't want information from their investigations to leak out, and yet they realize the American people are very hungry for information. Perhaps we can get some insight now on how these investigations work with Stanley Bedlington. He is a former CIA senior analyst, and he is joining us. It looks, sir, like you are in our Washington bureau, or is it New York?
No, I'm in Washington.
In Washington. Thanks for joining us, sir. Give us an idea and some clues as to how investigators are trying to put together some information. And I was thinking particularly looking at the plane manifest. Who got on board these 4 airplanes?
Well, first of all, I think you approach that sort of investigation at 2 levels. First, from the level of law enforcement, and secondly, from the level of intelligence, both of which working closely in tandem. You look at the passenger manifest, you do checks with your records, your data banks, either in the CIA or in the FBI, and then you go out and investigate the people. You find their houses, their addresses, and just follow up on that. That, I think, is very, very important.
So you look at everybody who was on board each of those 4 airplanes?
Well, absolutely. All must be very closely scrutinized.
Who they were, how they bought their ticket, how did they get to the airport. These are all things that could point toward the direction as to who was involved in this operation.
Of course, and you would investigate the taxi drivers who took them to the airport and every single detail about their getting on the plane. That is very important.
This, of course, today has so many people scratching their heads, and yesterday as well. America living in fear of a lot of things in recent years, but things like nuclear war, things like biological warfare. How many people actually stop to think that an airplane could be a deadly weapon?
Very few, including myself. I note that Louis Freeh, the director of the FBI, just before he retired, made a point saying that the most likely forms of terrorism in the United States in the near future would be first cyber warfare and secondly biological, chemical and radiological warfare. This is conventional terrorism, admittedly in a very, very deadly form.
And as people try to put their lives together, the question becomes, how do we avoid future attacks?
The point is that it's going to be extraordinarily difficult. I think we need a complete reordering of the Homeland Defense system on both a law enforcement and an intelligence level. Most of all, and most important, we need something that's being recommended over the years and has never been implemented. That is the setting up of some sort of body that coordinates throughout the country the activities of various departments of government and of state and local authorities.
So you're suggesting
very badly living.
You're suggesting that one of the basic problems is just communication between the agencies and the people that are already trying to work on this problem.
Well, it's not the major problem, but it is a problem, and I think we would be able to attack the problem far more effectively if we had such a committee with a very important person at the head of it who reports directly to the president.
Stanley Bedlington, former CIA senior analyst, thanks for your insights today, sir. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Leon.
And we ought to take another personal and I guess up-close look, if you will, of this tragedy from which so many are trying to recover. Our producer, Rose Arce, made her way down yesterday to Ground Zero at the World Trade Center, and she took a camera with her, and she kept this notebook and wants to show you now exactly what she saw.
We took a walk toward Ground Zero. There's hundreds of fire trucks coming this way. The sky was filled with fine pieces of glass and acrid smoke. Cars were covered with dust. The street had a thick coat of debris. There was like 4 inches of dust back there right by that building, and down on the ground there was people's resumes lying, office supplies. There was, pictures from people's desks that had been just singed, and they'd blown up. The building had blown up, and the stuff had just come down like confetti. There were doctors rushing to help people. Emergency workers were moving cautiously toward the building.
Keep your eye on that building. It'll be coming down.
This firefighter was trying to rescue people from 2 World Trade Centers. What did it feel like?
Very hot, pitch dark. Couldn't see almost anything. Almost crawling on your feet. A lot of debris everywhere going. A lot of rebar, a lot of broken glass, a lot of brick. Just not really too much smoke at the time, but a lot of debris.
And what about people?
There are people in there.
Another firefighter watched debris crush everyone on his truck but him. So what was it like when it collapsed? Was it
nightmare, total blindness, choking feeling. You're covered in dust, rubble, smoke, everything. I dove under a truck.
Closer to the building, it was almost like nighttime. What was left of the building was a fiery hulk. The firefighters thought it might collapse. Pieces of the building kept falling.
The building is about to blow up. Move it back.
Rescue workers pushed people away from the scene.
We are walking back. There's a building about to blow up. On flame, debris coming down.
So everyone moved back, leaving debris and silence.
All right, and I'm back on the CNN platform where you have a commanding view of what the New York skyline looks today, absent what once were the two tallest buildings in the city, the World Trade Center buildings, Tower 1, Tower 2, the North and South Tower, of course, collapsing with an hour and a half of the time that the hijacked jets crashed into them. Now it seems quite remarkable to many of us who've lived here that it is indeed the Empire State Building that stands the tallest in our proud but decimated city today. I'm going to check in with Aaron Brown, who had this identical vantage point that I've had today for many, many hours. Yesterday, he finds himself closer to ground zero than most of us have been able to get to. Aaron, can you describe to me what you've seen? I know you had some difficulty getting down there. All of the streets we've described earlier today from 14th Street South have been closed. What have you seen?
Well, Paula, just getting here was an experience that there's very little traffic, as you know. The West Side Highway, which is normally teeming with cars, is essentially a staging area. You see everything on the highway from utility vehicles, Con Edison vehicles, electric generators, night lights so that when it is safe to move in, they have some light to work 24 hours a day. Truck after truck of portable toilets. They need to get facilities in for people. There are sanitation trucks with snowplows on them. They'll be brought in at some point to clear the wreckage. As you get closer to the area, of course, and you look behind you, what I guess about 5 blocks from where Building 7 once stood, it continues, they continue to pour water on the smoldering building. Building 7 was the last of the buildings to collapse. Tower number 1 essentially collapsed on it. This is, granted, an oversimplification, but the weight of that crushed the building. The members of Congress, let me break quickly here, have just met with the president, and they are speaking now.
People who are out there trying to save lives, and the workers, the rescue workers, and all those folks that are around the clock doing their very, very best. And of course, our sympathies with the families and all those who have been the victims of this terrible, terrible act. But now is the time for government to move forward. We're in complete agreement that we will work together, that we want to share information, that we will be ready to move on whatever the president suggests, and we will go through the debate and the actions of Congress in a bipartisan way to make that happen. But as we said last night, when somebody takes this country for granted, when it violates the people of this nation and the sovereignty and the freedom of this nation, this Congress stands united shoulder to shoulder to do the right thing, to stand up for America and do the legislative work and process that we need to do. And we confirm that with the president today.
On a bipartisan basis, I think it is accurate to say that we literally and figuratively stand shoulder to shoulder in our appreciation of the job ahead. It is to help the victims, to care for the families, and to punish those responsible. With a single-mindedness of that appreciation, we begin our work this afternoon. On a united, bipartisan, bicameral basis, we will be passing a strongly worded resolution this afternoon. We will work with the administration to allocate the resources and to dedicate whatever strategy may be required to fulfill our obligations. It is our strong desire to do this not as Republicans or Democrats, but as Americans. And we will continue to demonstrate that desire as we consider whatever other actions may be required in days ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What did the president ask of you?
The congressional leadership, having met with the president, coming out to talk briefly with the press. First, the Speaker of the House, Denny Hassert, followed by the Majority Leader of the United States Senate, Democrat Tom Daschle. Kate Snow joins us now from Washington. Kate, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Aaron. We heard echoed there much of what we've been hearing ever since yesterday when congressional leaders started to come out and talk with us and say, look, we are united. We stand behind our president. We're going to give him the support that he needs. House members have been filing in while they've been talking. They've been filing in behind me here into the chamber. They are about to get a briefing as we speak from the FBI director, Mr. Mueller, and also from Attorney General John Ashcroft. The FEMA director, Joe Albaugh, had also talked about coming to brief Congress. We imagine he may be here as well. They're having these briefings behind closed doors, all of the members of the House inside the House chamber being briefed. That FEMA briefing will be especially important, Aaron, because one of the big questions looming here on Capitol Hill, although people would rather not have to even discuss this, but a big question will be how to pay for everything that you see going on in New York, at the Pentagon, in Pennsylvania. Who's going to pay for all of this? I talked to the Budget Committee chairman of the House, Jim Nussle, just a few moments ago, and he tells me that it's not likely they're going to give the president a blank check, if you will, but on the other hand, there is unanimous support, I should say, bipartisan support to help the president with what he needs and to give the money that's needed to help with immediate needs, with recovery, with rescue, with even rebuilding perhaps parts of the Pentagon. The Democrats, some of them are cautioning that they're going to be a little bit cautious about giving over too much and destroying the budget of the government. You know, there was a lot of discussion about the U.S. government's budget before all of this happened.
Kate, let me interrupt you here. I'm sorry. As Congress works on that, investigators continue to work on who's responsible. We want to join our coverage or the coverage of our affiliate in Boston, WHDH, for more on the investigation.
Weston Copley at this point. Relatively calm inside the hotel, except, of course, on the 16th floor where all of this flurry of activity is suddenly taking place. I was there briefly and saw that there were EMS standing by on that floor with stretchers, also police officers making sure that none of the guests or anybody else in the hotel was going to be getting off on the 16th floor, and also federal agents standing by there. They were obviously very intent in their efforts that were taking place there, whatever the operation was. However, they had not shut down the elevator to the floor as of 15 or 20 minutes ago. So it seemed to be that there was still some confusion among the guests, to some extent some confusion among the emergency personnel who were responding here. Much of what is happening in the hotel, though, seems to be business as usual, certainly outside of the extraordinary events now focused on the 16th floor.
And are you in the lobby right now?
Well, I don't want to tell you exactly where I am, Jonathan, but I'm upstairs in the hotel.
Okay. Are you able to get to any authority or anybody in charge you might be able to interview on the telephone?
We're going to try to do that right now, actually. We've been trying to reach those people, and I have talked to a few of the people. They're slowly beginning to understand what's happening, watching television sets where they can sneak into a room and see something that's going on. Very concerned for their safety, although nobody has officially told them that there's any threat to any of us who are inside the hotel at all. However, as the maids and some of the other staff here get word of this, they're just taking it upon themselves, I think, to leave and make sure that they're watching all of this from a better vantage point.
We'll continue with Julie outside. Christina, why don't you take a walk around and see if you can get anybody to speak with you?
It's very curious as to what really might be going on, because if you think if this is a bomb threat that the hotel would immediately evacuate everybody, but Christina is saying it appears there are still guests there and the maids are still walking around and they don't really know anything about what's going on.
It's a tale of two scenes. From Christina inside, it seems to be business as usual, but outside, Julie Auclair, this picture is anything but a normal day.
Anything but normal, Jonathan, and as you may be able to see, there are more and more people gathering. They are across the street all throughout Copley Square, everyone wanting to know what's going on in the Westin Hotel. At this point, as we mentioned, still dozens of police officers. They have the street blocked off just in front of the Westin Hotel. Tactical response team still inside. The entry and apprehension team, as I mentioned, going in with full gear, with their shields up, with their guns drawn. Up to the 16th floor where Christina McKenna saw them. They brought in the fiber optic equipment. They want to look under the doors. They want to see exactly what they're getting into before going into these rooms. We did get word a few minutes ago that possibly some suspects were in custody. That is not confirmed, but that they had gone back in to look and see if anyone else was in the rooms. I can't tell you how many people are out here. People are standing on top of cars just trying to get a better look. But as Christina said, it seems to be business as usual.
I'm not sure what floor she's on at this point, but I can see into the lobby, still people milling about, employees still inside trying to do their best to keep people calm, let everyone know that everything is okay for the time being. No evacuation at this point. But again, 2 ambulances waiting here outside. The armored truck that the technical team came from, they have been going back and forth to get more equipment. The last time they came out, they did get that fiber optic equipment, and they haven't come back since. But there is a huge police presence as they wait to see exactly inside.
This story, the wires, the Associated Press crossing the flash, the dozens of police officers have pulled up outside the Westin Hotel in the Back Bay. A tactical team is seen running in and out of the hotel, as we've been reporting to you for about the past 15 or 20 minutes.
Julie, we see from the glass doors of the